The smell of bacon hitting a flat-top griddle at 4 in the morning, the rattle of a chrome napkin dispenser sliding down a Formica counter, and the clack of a glass coffee pot on the warmer were the three sounds that opened your local diner in 1963. The cook had been on shift since 3. Truckers came through at 4:30, mill workers at 5, the office crowd at 7, and every plate left the pass under 3 minutes. Number 19 on this list fed a long-haul driver from Cleveland to Albuquerque on one order. Number 14 cost 85 cents in 1964. Number 8 was the breakfast night shift nurses ordered after 12-hour rotations at the county hospital. These 25 breakfasts fed the working morning of America through the longest economic boom of the 20th century. Hit subscribe and stay with us. Here are the 25 forgotten diner breakfasts. Number 25, cinnamon toast on the warmer. A small white plate slid out at the back of the pass with 2 slices of bread, butter melted across the surface, and a brown sugar and cinnamon crust set hard under the salamander. The cook kept a metal shaker of the mix next to the toaster and dusted the bread the way a baker dusts flour, then slid it under the broiler for 30 seconds. It was the order your mother got when she sat down at a counter stool with a coffee and could not face a full plate yet. Your own kitchen could not match it because your broiler did not glaze the sugar in 30 seconds. By the early 60s, cinnamon toast was a printed line on most laminated breakfast cards. Then, the cereal aisle ate it whole. Number 24, creamed eggs on toast. 2 hard-boiled eggs chopped rough and folded into a thin white sauce of butter, flour, and whole milk, ladled across 2 pieces of dry white toast cut on the diagonal. Your grandmother in Dayton ordered it after church because the dish was soft enough for a denture and rich enough to hold her through Sunday dinner. The waitress called it eggs on toast and never wrote out the full name. It was the breakfast the diners inherited from boarding houses and church basement Sunday breakfasts, a dish your grandmother already knew by feel. The trick was the salt in the sauce, which the home cook always under-seasoned. Creamed eggs slid off the menus when restaurants stopped trusting milk gravies on a long, warmer plate. The dish never came back. Number 23, buckwheat cakes with sorghum. A short stack of 3 thin, gray-brown cakes the size of a saucer, leavened with a buckwheat batter the cook started the night before in a covered crock. Sorghum syrup poured slow from a glass cruet, dark as molasses but with a sharp grain edge that maple could not match. A retired mill worker at a counter in Wheeling ate it every Saturday morning for 19 years and called it the only breakfast that worked. Buckwheat cakes were a holdover from the wheat rationing decades, kept alive by Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio diners that still bought a sack of buckwheat flour from a regional mill. The regional mills closed one by one through the 70s, the way the small canneries did, and by 1972, most counters had switched to a single all-purpose pancake batter. Your grandfather noticed the change in the first bite. Number 22, fried cornmeal mush squares. The cook poured cornmeal mush into a loaf pan the night before and chilled it solid in the walk-in. In the morning, he sliced it into half-inch squares, dredged them in flour, and seared them on the flat top until the crust crackled like a thin sheet of glass. 2 squares came on a plate with a pat of butter melting on top and a small white pitcher of dark cane syrup on the side. A Tennessee waitress called it fried mush and never argued with anyone who called it polenta. It cost 35 cents through the 60s and fed a generation of mill kids before school. The dish died once the cooks lost the patience to slice and dredge a chilled loaf at 4. Your aunt may still have the loaf pan in a back cupboard with the sticker from the original price still on the bottom. Number 21, pork roll, egg, and cheese. A round disc of Taylor pork roll, slit 4 times around the edge so it would lay flat on the griddle, seared 2 minutes aside until the rim curled and the surface developed a deep mahogany crust like seared ham. A fried egg with a soft yolk slid on top, a square of American cheese melted across both, and the whole thing landed on a buttered hard roll. A plumber in Trenton ate one every weekday morning for 3 decades and never asked the name of the cook. The sandwich was a New Jersey signature, but in the 60s you could find it across the entire I-95 corridor in any diner with a Taylor box in the walk-in. The 4 small cuts in the meat were the tell of a cook who knew the trade. It was the breakfast that built your working state. Number 20. Salt mackerel and home fries. A skin-on fillet of salt mackerel soaked overnight in cold water to draw the brine out, then broiled 3 minutes on a hot griddle until the edges crisped and the flesh flaked under a fork. The fish came on a plate with diced home fries, a wedge of lemon, and 2 slices of buttered rye. New England diners ran it as a Saturday morning special, a holdover from a fishing port breakfast culture that ran from Gloucester down to New Bedford. A retired dock worker in Portsmouth ate it every Saturday at the same counter stool with the same wedge of lemon. And your father, if he grew up north of Boston, may still remember the smell of the brine soak in the back kitchen on a Friday night. The dish died with the men who remembered the trawler decks. Number 19. The Lumberjack Trucker Special. The plate filled the entire pass-through window. 3 eggs cooked over medium, a 6-ounce ham steak with the bone in, 3 strips of thick-cut bacon, 2 breakfast sausages, a heap of hash browns the size of a man's hand, 4 pieces of buttered toast, a side of stewed apples, and a stoneware mug of coffee. The waitress refilled the second the rim got near the bottom. A long-haul driver running cargo out of Cleveland on a route that ended in Albuquerque ate one in the pre-dawn at a Truck Stops of America counter on Route 40 outside Columbus. And the calorie load carried him across the Mississippi, across Kansas, across the Texas Panhandle, and into the New Mexico high desert without another stop except for fuel. The plate cost $2.40 in 1964. Truck stop diners that ran 24 hours depended on the dish to fill the 4 to 6 slot when the cross-country fleet rolled through. The cook on the overnight shift could plate 8 of them in 7 minutes. Drivers called the plate the lumberjack, the trucker, the long haul, the 4-8 depending on the highway. What most people miss is that the plate was not built to be eaten in one sitting. The driver took half on the plate, asked for a foil wrapper, and ate the second half 300 miles later, parked on a shoulder outside Tulsa, with the engine idling. Then, in 1966, the federal hours of service rule was tightened. The cross-country fleets restructured into shorter relay legs, and the giant pre-dawn plate shrank back to a normal 3-egg breakfast on the menu of the same diners that used to send a man across your country on one order. Number 18. Scrapple with 2 eggs and fried apples. A 1/4-inch slice of Haberset scrapple seared 3 minutes aside on a hot flat top until the cornmeal crust cracked and the inside stayed soft and sage-scented. 2 eggs over easy on top, a side of cinnamon-scented fried apple slices in butter, and a wedge of buttered rye toast. Pennsylvania Dutch diners across the southeast quarter of the state ran the dish on every menu, and the scrapple loaf came in fresh on Tuesdays and Fridays from a meat company in Lansdale. A Berks County tractor mechanic ordered the plate every workday morning at a counter stool in Reading and never sat at the booth even when it was open. Scrapple itself dated to the German colonists in the 1700s, who brought a recipe for panhas, a meat scrap and grain pudding, across the Atlantic to the Philadelphia hinterland and built it into your regional breakfast vocabulary. The cornmeal and buckwheat binder, the sage and marjoram seasoning, and the loaf and slice habit were a thrift culture turned into a regional staple, the way the Pennsylvania Dutch turned every scrap into a passed-down dish. The cooks slicing scrapple at 4 in the morning were the last commercial link between a colonial-era food culture and a working-class counter. When the small regional packers consolidated in the 70s, the supply chain narrowed and the dish slid off menus outside the mid-Atlantic. A cook in Allentown said it best when a waitress asked him why he kept slicing the loaf at 4 every Tuesday and Friday. He told her the men on the early shift would notice if the slice got thinner, and they did. The dish survived as long as the men did. Number 17. Buttermilk pancakes with a bacon strip. 3 pancakes the size of the saucer, a single thick strip of bacon laid across the top like a brown sash, and a small steel pitcher of warm syrup tipped slow over the stack so it soaked into the seam between the cakes. The bacon on pancake order was the standard child's breakfast at most diners through the 60s, and the cook ladled the batter from a stainless quart pitcher straight onto the flat top. The cake hit the griddle, bubbled at the edge, and the cook flipped it once, 90 seconds aside. A school bus driver in Sandusky brought his daughter to a counter stool every Friday before her early school day and ordered her the stack with the strip and a small glass of orange juice. And your father may have done the same for you, the same stool, the same Friday morning ritual, the same orange juice. The dish was as much a ritual as a meal. Number 16. Codfish cakes with a poached egg. 2 flat brown cakes of mashed potato and salt cod, bound with egg and pan-fried in butter on the flat top until the surface crisped. A poached egg slid on top, the yolk broke, and the orange ran down across the cakes like a slow tide. New England coastal diners served the plate every Friday morning as a holdover from the Catholic abstinence rule, and the salt cod came up the coast from Gloucester in wooden boxes. A retired Boston subway motorman ate the cakes every Friday morning at a counter stool on Causeway Street for 31 years. When the diner closed in 1991, he stopped going out for breakfast at all. The cakes vanished from the city the same year the last salt cod boxes stopped arriving on Atlantic Avenue. Number 15. Red flannel hash with beets. Diced corned beef, diced boiled potato, and diced cooked beets, packed onto the back of a hot flat top under a bacon weight until the bottom developed a deep red-brown crust like a bruise. The cook slid the cake off in one piece, flipped it, and finished it crust down. 2 eggs poached in the steam well went on top. A retired New Hampshire mill foreman in Manchester ate the dish every Sunday morning through the entire 60s decade, and the cook kept a separate cast-iron press on the back of the griddle just for his order. The deep beet color was the whole point, the way the corned beef got reused 2 days after the boil, the way the breakfast plate carried a Friday roast forward into your Sunday morning. Your grandmother in New England may have done the same at home, the boiled dinner Friday, the red hash Sunday. The dish disappeared with the corned beef boil itself. Number 14. The 85-cent 2-egg plate. 2 eggs cooked any style, 2 strips of crisp bacon, a scoop of hash browns, 2 slices of buttered white toast cut diagonally, and a refillable cup of coffee. The plate cost 85 cents at most independent diners in 1964, and the price held steady through the middle of the decade, the price card behind the counter retyped every 6 months. A Toledo office clerk on a Greyhound layover ate one in 1964, paid $1, left the change as a tip, and walked out at 6:20 with the day still ahead of him. The same plate cost $1.10 by 1969, $1.45 by 1972, and $2 by the middle of the 70s. The printed price card behind the counter chased the inflation curve quietly until it stopped trying. The 85-cent plate was the architectural backbone of the working American morning. It was the price point that allowed an hourly worker on a $4 shift to buy a hot breakfast, leave a 15-cent tip, and still keep $3 in his pocket. The plate ran on every counter in the country at a price within a nickel of the same number, because the diner industry in 1964 was operating with butter at 58 cents a pound, eggs at 50 cents a dozen, and bacon at 69 cents a pound. The math worked, and the cook on the early shift could plate 15 of them in 9 minutes. But the inflation of the late 60s, the energy shock of 1973, and the consolidation of the food supply in the 70s broke the price point. By 1980, the plate was $3.25. The 85-cent breakfast was the last moment in your country's history when a hot full plate was within reach of a man working an hourly shift. The plate did not disappear. The price did, and your father's stool at the counter is still bolted to the floor. Number 13. Liver and onions for breakfast. A 1/4-inch slice of beef liver dusted in seasoned flour and seared on a hot flat top with a pile of slow caramelized yellow onions on top. 2 eggs over easy, and a slice of rye toast came with the plate. The order was a heavy worker's breakfast, run on most counters as a Wednesday special. A foundry worker in Youngstown took the breakfast every Wednesday for 19 years before his shift. Liver as a breakfast meat slid off the menus in the 70s as the offal counter at the meat company stopped showing up on Tuesdays. Your grandfather, if he worked a furnace shift, may have ordered it before any of his children ever saw a liver in a kitchen at home. Number 12. T-bone steak and eggs. A small T-bone, 6 to 8 ounces, seared on a hot flat top until the bone side crust set hard, plated with 3 eggs over easy, a heap of hash browns, and buttered white toast cut on the diagonal. A cattle broker in Omaha ordered it every Monday morning at a counter stool in the stockyards diner before he walked out to the pen lines, because the steak breakfast at the diner cost less than the same plate at the dinner hour. The dish carried a wage day premium at most union diners, and a man who ordered it on a Friday morning was telling the counter, the way a flag tells you which way the wind is blowing, that the paycheck had cleared. Steak and eggs survived into the modern era at chains, but the small independent counter beside a stockyard is gone with the yards. Number 11. Hangtown Fry. A small omelette folded around 3 breaded oysters and crumbled bacon, served with hash browns and buttered sourdough. The dish dated to the gold rush camps of Placerville, California in the 1840s, where an oyster and egg breakfast was the most expensive plate a miner could order with a fresh strike. A retired Sacramento Valley fruit packer at a counter stool in Stockton ordered it on the first Saturday of every month for 30 years. By 1965, the fresh oyster supply chain that ran from the Olympia coast down to the Bay Area was already shrinking, the way the salmon runs shrank a decade later, and the dish slowly disappeared from the West Coast menus through the 70s. Your great-uncle who worked the canneries may still remember the smell of the broiler oysters at the Stockton counter. The breakfast oyster never came back. Number 10. Country fried steak with cream gravy. A pounded cube steak dredged in seasoned flour, pan-fried in a 1/4 inch of pork lard until the crust set deep brown, plated with a ladle of pan drippings cream gravy that pooled across the meat and the home fries like a slow flood. 2 eggs over medium, and a buttered biscuit came on the side. A Texas oil field foreman at a La Mesa counter stool ate the plate every weekday morning for 2 decades and never asked the cook to swap the lard for shortening. The Midwest and the South used the dish as the heaviest breakfast on the menu, and a cook on the early shift could turn out a dozen plates in 15 minutes if the lard was hot. The cube steak and lard was a cattle country adaptation of a European cutlet your grandmother could not match at home because no household stove ran the lard hot enough. Number 9. Hot oatmeal with brown sugar and cream. A bowl of slow-cooked rolled oats, a small ramekin of dark brown sugar, a small pitcher of cold whole cream, and a wedge of buttered raisin toast on the side. The cook started the oatmeal pot at 4 in the morning, kept it on the lowest burner through the breakfast rush, and ladled out the bowl on order. A retired school teacher in Worcester took the bowl every Tuesday morning for 24 years at the same booth and never switched to the cold cereal the menu added in 1968. The cook kept the pot until the cold cereal aisle in the supermarket killed the demand for the slow bowl on the warmer. Your grandmother kept making it at home long after the diners gave up. The slow stir, the brown sugar lid, the cold cream poured at the edge so it pooled around the warm grain were a small generational ritual the supermarket aisle never replaced. Number 8. SOS. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Thinly sliced dried beef rinsed of its salt cure, simmered in a butter and flour roux thinned with whole milk, and finished with a heavy crack of black pepper, ladled across 2 slices of dry white toast on a heavy oval plate. The dish dated to the Manual for Army Cooks of 1910, and the wartime servicemen who came home in 1946 brought the craving with them onto the diner counter. By 1962, the plate was on every menu from Pennsylvania, west to Indiana, and south to Virginia, and the breakfast cost 60 cents. The night shift nurses at the county hospital in Allentown ordered the dish at the diner across the street the moment the 7 a.m. shift change ended, after a 12-hour rotation on the medical surgical floor. The plate had everything a body needed at the end of a long night: the protein from the cured beef, the fat from the butter and the milk, the carbohydrate from the toast, and the salt the body had burned through over 12 hours. The waitress knew the rotation by heart and ladled out 3 plates at 6:55 every weekday, the toast already in the toaster, the gravy on the warmer. The nurses sat at the same 3 stools every morning, the way you sit in the same pew at a church you grew up in. The dish was the silent recovery meal of the working night shift culture. The orderlies, the police, the press operators, the fire dispatchers, the men and women who came off a hard rotation and needed 2,000 calories of soft, hot food inside 10 minutes. Creamed chipped beef stayed on the menu through the 70s, then slid off in the 80s as the dried beef supply chain narrowed. The craving did not go away. The plate did. Number 7. The Howard Johnson Buckwheat Blueberry Stack. 3 buckwheat cakes the size of a tea saucer, a generous handful of fresh Maine blueberries folded into the batter on the griddle, and a small steel pitcher of warm Vermont maple syrup. Howard Johnson restaurants ran the stack as a regional breakfast signature on the New England turnpikes, and the Orange Roof restaurants on the Massachusetts and Connecticut routes built a Saturday morning family breakfast culture around the plate. A young father from Springfield drove his 3 children to the same Howard Johnson counter every Saturday morning of 1964 and 1965 before the divorce, and the children ordered the stack every time. The chain shrank through the 70s, and the buckwheat blend was discontinued in the 80s. Your father, if he was a Northeast suburban dad in the 60s, may still remember the way the syrup soaked the corners of the stack first. Number 6. Soft-boiled eggs in egg cups with toast soldiers. 2 soft-boiled eggs in white china cups with the tops sliced off in a single clean cut, a small porcelain cup of salt and pepper, and 4 narrow rectangles of buttered toast cut to the exact width of the egg cup opening. Your grandmother in Philadelphia ordered the plate every weekday morning at the corner counter for 19 years and called the toast strips her soldiers. The British inheritance was visible in the plating, the way the British seaside breakfast traveled across the Atlantic with the merchant marine. The egg cup ritual, the slow tap of the silver spoon to crack the shell, and the careful dip of the toast soldier into the warm yolk were a quiet, gentle habit the speed line counter killed by 1968. Your grandmother may still have those white china cups in a glass cabinet she does not open anymore. Number 5. The Denver omelette. 3 eggs scrambled with diced ham, diced green bell pepper, and diced yellow onion, folded once on a hot flat top, and slid out onto a heavy oval plate with a heap of hash browns and buttered toast. The dish carried a frontier West Coast origin story that ran from the Chinese rail cooks of the Transcontinental Railroad in the 1860s to the Colorado mining camps and the early Denver lunch counters. By the 60s, the omelet was the standard West American breakfast on a counter from Reno to Cheyenne, and a cattle hauler at a Wyoming counter stool ate the plate every weekday for 13 years. The fold was the signature, the way a tailor's cuff gives away the trade, and a cook who broke the fold did not last on the early shift. Your kids may still order the Denver at a chain spot, with no idea the green pepper traces back to a rail line and a mining camp cook. Number 4. French toast with cane syrup. 3 slices of day-old white bread soaked in a custard of egg, milk, and a half teaspoon of vanilla, seared on a buttered flat top until the surface caramelized and the inside set soft. A small steel pitcher of dark cane syrup, not maple, came on the side. The cane syrup was a Louisiana inheritance that ran north along the river to Memphis and St. Louis and east into Atlanta. A quiet regional habit maple eventually erased. A retired Memphis cotton broker at a counter on Beale Street took the plate every Saturday and never switched to maple. The day the cook substituted maple without telling him, he noticed in the first bite. He paid and walked out. Your grandmother in the river towns may still keep a bottle of cane in the back of the pantry for the rare Sunday she remembers the difference. Number 3. Eggs Benedict in a chrome counter diner. 2 split halves of an English muffin toasted on the griddle, a slice of seared Canadian bacon on each, a poached egg on top, and a ladle of warm hollandaise spooned across the plate at the moment the order left the pass. The dish dated to a Waldorf Hotel hangover order in 1894, and by the early 60s, a handful of Greek-owned diners in the Northeast had quietly added the plate to the back of the breakfast card as a Sunday-only special. A wedding photographer in Newark ate the plate every Sunday morning at a counter stool on Broad Street for 22 years. The chrome counter version was a small bridge between the hotel-restaurant tradition and the working-class diner counter, the way the Greek owners themselves bridged a New York hotel kitchen and a New Jersey roadside counter. The bridge held only until the hollandaise fell out of the diner kitchen in the 70s. The dish moved up market and never came back. Number 2. Biscuits and sausage gravy. 2 split buttermilk biscuits the size of a saucer, ladled with a thick white pan gravy made from breakfast sausage, pork drippings, flour, and whole milk. The gravy black pepper flecked across the surface like a snow-dusted field. The plate cost 45 cents on most southern diner counters in the 60s, and a coal company foreman in Hazard, Kentucky, ate the plate every weekday morning for 2 decades at a counter stool inside a converted railroad car diner. The dish dated to the Appalachian sawmill camps of the late 1800s, where it was called sawmill gravy because the timber crews ate it before the morning whistle. A cook on the early shift could turn out 22 plates in 11 minutes when the mill rush hit at 5:30. Your father, if he grew up south of the Mason-Dixon line, may still remember the sound of the gravy ladle hitting the rim of the warmer pot. Number 1. 2 eggs, bacon, and home fries. 2 eggs cooked over easy on a hot flat top, the yolks barely set and the whites lacy at the edge, 3 strips of crisp bacon laid across the side, a heap of diced home fries seared in the bacon fat with a little onion and paprika, and buttered white toast cut on the diagonal. The plate was the architectural cornerstone of your country's diner breakfast, the most ordered plate on every counter for the entire decade of the 60s. The cook plated it without thinking, the waitress called it a regular, and the counter in Akron, Ohio in 1965 turned out 400 of them between 5:30 and 10 on a Friday. The simple ritual, the cracked eggs hitting the griddle, the bacon laid in 3 parallel lines, the home fries pulled from the corner of the flat top, was the heartbeat of every working town in America. But the plate has not disappeared. The counter that turned out 400 a morning, with the cook who knew every regular by the door, is the part that has. McDonald's is also something you usually associate with burgers, fries, and a pretty good shake just like Wendy's, but they would also try to rebrand a little with their McSkillet burrito. Originally something they launched in the November of 2007, it was a masterpiece that captivated people immediately and became one of the biggest parts of their sales, giving their breakfast menu just as much success, if not more, than anybody else's. When you think about a McSkillet, you should imagine one of those monster burritos from Chipotle. This was just as famous as those which were pretty much the king of the burrito game, but people would often begin alternating between the McSkillet or outright switching to it. We mean it really went well with some steak and roja sauce as add-ons. It is just that the McSkillet was not particularly a new concept, so when the initial hype died down, it got discontinued in 2013. Even now, there are still many online petitions to bring it back, so who knows? You ever have leftovers but you don't want to make what you had last night? If your leftovers happen to be potatoes, mashed or otherwise, then potato cakes are your hero for today's Saturday dinner. Potato cakes are the ultimate leftover glow-up, and they're a fine example of how putting a little bit of faith, time, and creativity into what you think is nothing that's special can actually result in a killer dish. Potato cakes are made from mashed potatoes that have been mixed with a generous bit of flour, egg, and then shaped into patties until they're golden brown. Just think of them like hash browns, or at least like a distant but more nostalgic and comfier cousin of hash browns. The flavor is what you would expect, but it's honestly more buttery than you would think too. You're really going to have the time of your life if your original mashed potatoes that are left over were made with cream or garlic mixed in, but even if they weren't, that's always a step you can add later. Potato cakes were the gift of several immigrant communities that were putting down roots during the 1800s and 1900s. This is a dish that's been shared among Irish, German, and Polish families, so everybody has their own take on it, and I know boxed mashed potatoes and freezer meals are what everyone goes for today. But this still beats all of that. These size extra-large pancakes, on the other hand, have all the star power you could want in something that migrates its way from German tables to American couches. Dutch baby pancakes are exactly how you make a first impression on a foreign audience. Appeal to the familiar, bring in the new, and find a balance between both. Flavors that Americans typically hadn't ever associated with pancakes were suddenly on the cards for them, and that went for textures too, because this really didn't feel like any pancake your mom would whip up or one available in a diner. These needed a preheated oven and had to be baked for a lot longer. One pancake per person isn't the rule here. This is very much a group meal. Unfortunately, you have to have a lot of confidence in your recipe if your aim is to shake up America's love for its convenient pancake-oriented breakfasts. These pancakes weren't as customizable because they couldn't be mixed directly into the batter, and they took a lot more time to make than regular ones did. Americans think of pancakes as a quick, perfect breakfast before work, and that's the situation they often find themselves craving one in. This did not fit that memo, and for a few more reasons, like competition from other, more convenient and trendier options of the era, Dutch baby pancakes fell off. I have quite a sweet tooth today, and I wish I could say that's because that time of the month is approaching. But, oh well, no excuses for me. Coming in on number 3, we have peanut butter muffins. This probably sounds familiar, and that is because you've most likely heard every health-oriented TikToker or Instagram influencer mention it at least once. It is quite popular in today's day and age, and not for bad reasons. But during the Great Depression, they weren't as luxurious as they are today. Quite the contrary, they were literal lifesavers. Peanut butter was cheap, packed with protein, and easy to store, making it a go-to ingredient for stretching meals. The muffins were a genius creation, made from simple pantry staples like flour, sugar, and a big scoop of peanut butter. They didn't need eggs or butter, which were often hard to come by, and they baked up into a hearty, slightly crumbly treat that filled you up for hours. The peanut butter provided a rich, nutty flavor, and you could eat them for breakfast, lunch, or as a snack, midday or midnight. They weren't just about the taste. They were supposed to give you strength for the day, and that's exactly what they did. They were a practical, budget-friendly way to get in as much protein as possible when times were tough. Milk toast is also pretty much exactly what you think it is. Back in the old days, it was so much more common for people to take an intentionally frugal approach to how they spent their food, and especially the kind of hacks, snacks, and dishes they would come up with. All of these ideas were centered around being able to make the most using the least amount of time, energy, and ingredients possible. Milk toast is one of the best examples of that because imagine if you tried to make the most out of some milk or some bread before it was about to hit those pearly gates and become fully expired. Yeah? You can't really figure out what to do because while you'd normally just eat them on their own separately, this time, that doesn't work. You just go ahead and get milk toast ready. The best part is that it works in 3 different ways. You get a nice healthy meal that's a pretty good breakfast or an interlude meal before your next big meal. You get to save money because you're not letting anything go to waste, nor are you buying something new because these ingredients are probably on their last legs, and you get a pretty lovely dessert out of it too. What's not to like, really? It's kind of insane how convenient milk toast can really be. You know, for something called the Does Not Disappoint Breakfast Casserole, this couldn't live up to its name. It was made out of eggs, sausage, cheese, hash browns, and even bread. And yes, for those of you who are calorically observant, that is a dump truck of carbs. It also takes a lot of time to make. It can take an hour or more to get going, and if you get greedy and pop it out early, you just won't have a good-tasting breakfast. Also, this might seem odd to you, but Planned Parenthood is another thing. See, the trend these days is smaller and smaller families or married couples even putting off kids in favor of building a career together and getting their credit up. Back in the 20th century, it was the complete opposite. People had families of 4, 5, and even 6, and that goes for people living in uptown cities too. That was the norm, you know? Get married, have kids. As a result, most of the food you'll see from that era is extremely crowd-oriented. It's meant to feed several people, and that's why it takes a long while to make too. And that just doesn't fit the breakfast needs of the modern American, who's pretty much used to grabbing deli wraps on the way to their 9-hour shift. Staying on the sweet side of things, we'll be talking about the ultimate zero-waste recipe, banana bread. Back then, letting food go to waste was practically a crime against humanity, and banana bread was the best solution for those overripe bananas to be saved. Instead of tossing them, creative cooks found a delicious way to use them up. They mixed them with flour, sugar, and a bit of baking soda, and created a nice, dense loaf of heaven. Eggs and butter were optional, and people often replaced them with whatever fat they had lying around. The natural sweetness of bananas made it a budget-friendly alternative to other desserts. Plus, banana bread was highly versatile. You could throw in nuts, raisins, cinnamon, or whatever odds and ends you could scrape up to stretch it even further. Banana bread was one of those Depression-era foods that stuck around to this day, and it's for good reasons. It is the epitome of a sweet, delicious, but healthy treat that has got everyone in a chokehold. It is healthy and packed with nutrients, while still remaining tasteful and filling. No wonder all those cooking influencers are making banana bread every other day. Gee, show us another recipe. Something that was as essential to the hearty sandwich experience in the 80s as the meat itself, the cinnamon raisin biscuits that they first released back then are also something people have constantly expressed their desire to see again. Seriously, it was impossible to not order this with whatever you were having. It was only some cents, and it elevated the meal to something else entirely. Think about how your Subway just does not feel complete without a chocolate cookie to go with it, except it is that feeling by 10 times. Cinnamon raisin biscuits were delectable, refreshing, and a light enough breakfast to be fulfilling without making you lazy. Unfortunately, for some odd reason unknown to all of us, despite its very warm place in the hearts of the fans, they took it off the menu in 2002. Vinegar pie for breakfast is something that really just doesn't even sound like a real meal. It honestly sounds like some kind of prank, but no. This is a very real dish, and it actually works in more ways than one. For starters, this doesn't really taste the way you think it would. I know you're imagining some really bitter, acidic notes from the vinegar, but the initial flavor beats are sweet tart, and they give off a very custardy vibe. It's a bit like a lemon chess pie, but just made with your typical pantry staples instead this time. The vinegar is the star of the show, as it should be, and it cuts through almost every other flavor present in the pie, but not to the point where you would think all you can taste here is just vinegar. It's rich. It has this tangy brightness that actually is very stimulating for your taste buds, and if you pair it up with some hot coffee, then it works as well as Bruno Mars does with Anderson .Paak. Vinegar pie is something that strangely, despite being a pretty innovative and flavorful hit, is something that would be called a desperation pie because it's something that was made mostly by the women of the South and the Midwest living in rural populations. Competition from the citrus side of things is unexpected when you think about cranberry orange muffins beating out the largest pancakes you've ever seen, but anything's known to happen during lunch in America. The thing with those was that they didn't really give us too much over what we already had, but this is a stellar example of how to do exactly that just right. It was a staple in cafes, homes, and even bakeries, and really, it dying out is no fault of its own. Sometimes it's just a sign of the times and changing trends that knocks these winners off of their thrones and leaves them in the dust. Does that mean this is a recipe that isn't worth your time? Not at all, especially if it got its rep during the 70s, where good and new food was definitely not in short supply. You don't even have to worry about the seasonal thing anymore since you can just get oranges throughout the year now. It's probably still got some die-hard fans in a few areas here and there, but cranberry and orange as a combination lost steam throughout the later half of the 20th century. One of the most popular breakfasts of the time was Depression donuts. Forget your regular Krispy Kreme order and start writing this down. Depression donuts were all about survival since people back then weren't really rolling in dough, pun intended. But with minimal ingredients like flour, water, baking powder, and maybe a spoonful of sugar, these donuts became like a gift sent from above. Since eggs, butter, and milk were often scarce or expensive, people improvised with what they had. For the preparation, you'd mix up the dough and make it into little rings or balls depending on your preference, and fry in oil until golden brown. The results were immaculate. But if you've never fired donuts, don't expect this to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You have to be careful because that oil will fool you. You think you're the one in charge, setting the stove temperatures and being all fancy. But once that oil is hot, there's no telling if you are frying or burning those donuts. So be careful, because donuts are no joke. Next up, we have something that you would think people would want to have during a movie or their favorite show, but worked great as breakfast too. Burger King's French toast sticks first came around in 1985 in competition with Wendy's, who was also launching their own stick campaign in hopes of claiming a place in America's fast food Hall of Fame. And hey, they did, but the Burger King ones just had something saucy in them, something that gave you a jolt of energy for your regular sucky Monday morning shift or lecture. Some other places did try to make these toast sticks like Jack in the Box and Sonic, and some of those were pretty big players like McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts. They did not have as big of a piece of the pie as Burger King, though. What particularly helped these sticks keep their momentum is how well they paired with other items on the menu, and even some of the others on this list later on. Of course, they were great a la carte as well, but who really goes to fast food joints and walks out without combo meals, especially in those old 90s days? Still, those eras are definitely far behind us now, as the time of the French toast stick is long gone by today. Let's talk crackling cornbread. This is the cornbread that absolutely doesn't mess around. Like, this is the supersonic of cornbread. This is that rugged, crispy-edged cousin of your typical cornbread muffin, and it brings with it all the rustic charm that cornbread is always known for. Crackling cornbread has always come from the innovative kitchens of the working class, and this is especially true in the South, where using anything less than all of the hog was considered culinary blasphemy. Wasting fat? You may as well hang up your butcher knife. It was about no waste, and cracklins were a prime example of why that mentality worked. These were gold, and stirring them into cornbread only made them shine brighter. It made the bread a lot more filling and gave it extra protein, and you needed that because if you were coming back from a day of shoveling mud, then you definitely needed something for those muscles. It was a proper lunch though, and it was even better with some fresh greens on the side. Crackling cornbread is something that pretty much has faded into the background nowadays, but it was the perfect kind of thing for when you had nothing but a skillet, an empty stomach, and a lot of grit and determination to make something worth eating. It's a 10 out of 10 for a lot of Southerners, and nothing's really changing that. Here's another evident case of something losing to its betters. Caramel rolls. Much like how Dutch baby pancakes lost in the long run to the standard, nostalgic, and ever so timeless regular pancake, caramel rolls could never overtake cinnamon rolls. They were pretty good for what they were, and they even made a pretty decent name for themselves in cafes and bakeries. Caramel rolls had it all initially. They were really nice. They had sweetness, nice packaging, good marketing, all the things you'd need to really get yourself out there in the wider world. Unfortunately, there were a few reasons they just fell a little short of cementing themselves as a staple of American eating and baking that would last well into the 2000s. They were also messy and hard to make, and while the sweetness was a plus point, it also made them really calorically dense and bad for you in the larger picture of things. See, by this point in time, the American masses were glucose veterans. They went through ice cream parlors, soda fountains, the golden age of fast food chains, and so many other things that really racked up the damage they were doing to their bodies just through their diets. As a result, as time kept going on, people started to abandon things like this, which were just excessive. Plus, good old cinnamon rolls do the job so much better, and they're not really that bad for you as long as you keep it under control. And come on, who doesn't love peanut butter in any way, shape, or form? Coffee soup, the liquid breakfast of the hard times. Coffee soup was one of the more unconventional Depression-era breakfasts, but it made sense when you think about the times. Coffee was cheap, which might come as a shocker since it is so expensive now. It was also widely available, so when families didn't have much to eat, they turned it into a meal. The recipe was dead simple. Pour a cup of strong, hot coffee over a slice of day-old bread or crackers, and there you have it, breakfast. Sometimes sugar or milk would be added if they were available, but more often than not, it was just coffee and bread. This was a quick and easy way to stretch a little coffee into something that felt a lot more filling than it looked. Coffee soup wasn't exactly gourmet, but it gave people the energy boost they needed to start their day, and it was a comforting routine when other breakfast options were out of reach. The bitter taste of coffee combined with the soft bread created a unique flavor that grew on you after a while. I am a coffee addict as much as the next person, maybe even more, but this may be the tipping point for me. But I guess it's kind of like a tiramisu, only without the cream filling, right? Maybe I would try it. God only knows it can never be too much coffee. Speaking of dreamy sandwiches that set the mood just right, it would be downright criminal to record this and not talk about Jack in the Box's prime rib steak and egg sandwich. A warm flour tortilla wrap with hash browns, prime rib, cheese, onions, and a lot more, making it one of the most premium savory thrills you could get on an affordable budget. People ate these up like goblins, sparing no thought for the punch to their gut health-wise or how heavy one of these really was. Listen, this really shouldn't be too surprising if you know anything about prime rib steak and America's long-standing love for each other. It has always been one of the most popular ways to get your protein, and the idea of prime rib steak sandwiches and other bread-based dishes is not new. What was new was the innovative flavors Jack in the Box managed to hit and maintain with its sauces, and we gotta say, adding in the hash browns definitely helped too. Something we would spend a quarter of our paycheck on if it came out today for sure. Hot water fried cornmeal cakes are an old-school Southern staple that don't really get even half the love and attention they should these days. I just want you to visualize a crispy, golden brown cornmeal cake with the most incandescent exterior you've ever seen, and then a tender, soft center that just leaves you wanting more and more. But it's natural, and even good, to get curious. And when you hear hot water fried anything, your first instinct is to immediately go like, wait, what? And I really wouldn't blame you. The practice of making cornmeal cakes this way is something that actually goes back several centuries, right back to the enslaved African Americans in the South who were making the first versions of these. Without access to proper feed, not even leavening, they found a way to make do with just cornmeal and water, and these were also known by a much more popular name, hoe cakes. Now, in the end, they started to fall out of everyone's go-to cooking preferences, but I think cornmeal cakes have one more comeback in them, despite it all. Sometimes things just get old, and sometimes they just don't work. We've had our fair share of both, and scones with clotted cream and jam are a bit of a mix of the two. Now, US and UK cuisines don't generally tend to mix, even though we've had lots of crossovers in the past now. Scones with cream and jam, at least these ones that would use clotted cream, were the quintessential British snack. If your idea of John, 32 from West Virginia, is somebody in plaid or flannel getting real intimate with a hot dog, then your idea of Martin, 28 from Birmingham, is somebody in a blazer enjoying a scone. It's just what we associate with the people, you know? These scones were something that immigrants from the UK brought on over with them, and don't get me wrong, in their parts of the country where there would be large British-American presences, it definitely was something that got a lot of mileage. In other places, it just wasn't really that much of a hit, and clotted cream wasn't really something a lot of people had access to. Kind of a bummer when your core ingredient ends up being in short supply for the masses, but maybe this one staying a niche secret is a good thing. I'm not the biggest scone fan after all, but this is all about you, so how do you feel about this little treat? Dandelion greens, though a bit bitter as far as I've heard, were packed with vitamins and minerals, and most important of all, they were free. People would pluck them straight from their yards, or a neighbor's yard if they weren't looking, and sauté them in a bit of bacon grease or whatever fat was available. The bitterness of the greens was tamed by scrambling them together with eggs, which added much-needed protein to the mix. I know some of you are already typing those angry comments like, they were so poor that they had to eat grass, but they somehow had eggs? And to that, I have to say, no. They most likely didn't have money for eggs, but a lot of people had their own chickens or knew somebody who did. And in tough times, people wanted to help each other as much as they could. There was something back then that is clearly lacking today, and that's a sense of community. But that's a topic for a different video. Sonic kind of stood out from the rest of the crowd with their take on a burrito-based breakfast. Their breakfast burrito had plenty of sausage, tots, cheese, and some bacon to top it off. It was pretty beloved, even though Sonic did not have the same pull as some of the biggest names in the fast food industry. Now, do not get us wrong, they were popular and a good local breakfast option, but their popularity was not as widespread as, let's say, McDonald's. As time passed, newer chains like Chipotle introduced their breakfast burritos that gained more traction than Sonic could generate. This meant a downfall in popularity for a breakfast burrito that once was loved by every person that visited Sonic. This led to the burrito being discontinued sometime at the start of the 2000s. Tallow fried potatoes are the OG French fries. They're insanely flavorful. They have that beautiful golden sheen to them, and they're about as crispy as you would want the perfect batch of French fries to be, A lot of that color, vividness, and flavor comes from the fact that they're fried in rendered beef fat instead of vegetable oil. Now, back in the day, and I mean way before the 80s, fast food joints like McDonald's were actually using beef tallow in their fries as well. That was a big part of what gave them that original iconic flavor. Tallow helps potatoes achieve a savory flavor that they would never be able to get to on their own. Plus, this just isn't there today with the modern oils we have. The best part really was the exterior, because a simple first bite was about as close to nirvana as you could get. If you were eating these when you were borderline starving, then you were pretty much about to have the best food experience of your life. Tallow was the go-to frying fat for a lot of American diners and fast food kitchens, and it's just not hard to see why. And then Eggs Florentine was supposed to be this entirely new spin on Eggs Benedict. But see, when your entire selling pitch is that the new spin in question is just spinach, it doesn't really end up pulling its weight in the larger landscape of American eating. I mean, don't get me wrong, this thing shelled out more brunches than anyone expected it to, and it was a dynamite item on a lot of menus. But was it ever going to last past the wave of health-conscious suburban moms vying for the next optimized caloric deficit, and who would come up with it? Not really. It was a great dish, and it did some interesting things with hollandaise sauce, but overall, this little bit of English tradition could never really find a home within American neighborhoods, on their tables. Plus, the entire point of a fresh new take is to offer something different from the original. But as it stood, a lot of people just preferred their typical Eggs Benedict compared to Florentine. Costing nothing but $1 and 3 minutes of your time as the service worker assembled it, Taco Bell's mini skillet bowls were an amazing breakfast and lunch that people adored picking up. Why was it so good for takeout especially, and not a meal you would typically sit down and have? Because it was super quick in all regards, the preparation and the consumption. A quick affair to get you all readied up on your way to work or school, and it was always a sunny plus side that it left you with enough lunch money for later. In the corporate world, you really need cash on hand at all times for those midday cravings, and that is a part of why fast food culture and restaurants got so popular in the first place. Since the famous old Bell decided to take down the mini skillet bowls from their already stellar menu, people have found quick substitutes and ways around it. Boiled barley porridge is one of those breakfasts that just feels like a pat on the back from a mentor, a hug from your best friend, or a call from your grandparents asking you to come over and try some of that breakfast you always love. It's also something that's built to last you at least until the middle of the day. You make boiled barley porridge by simmering hulled or pearl barley into water and milk, and then you get a soft, creamy texture that almost melts in your mouth. Flavor-wise, though, it's pretty nutty and kind of similar to oatmeal. You get a chewer bite and a bit more earthiness out of this, but it soaks up almost any kind of syrup or liquid you throw at it, as well as spices. That's a big part of why this dish is as flavorful as it is. We're talking about some serious ancient history when we discuss its origins, though, like this is the kind of thing that goes way further back, to the times of the Romans and medieval peasants. In the United States, it's something that was popular first in rural areas and immigrant homes, but each country has its own history with barley. Popovers were these light pastries that needed nothing special at all. You had your eggs, milk, and flour, and then you were pretty much set to go. Seeing these at a table was just as common as seeing those floral print chinas that just about every household had for some reason. But you go to a dinner at anyone's today, and the last thing you'll see is some popovers. Now, why is that? The thing is, they're really easy to mess up. They need preheated pans, a hot oven, and a very detail-oriented cooking process that needs a lot of focus and precision. For the amount of effort and skill that this takes, there's just not enough value to make it a sustainable and reliable option out in the field for most home cooks. They'd rather just make something like pigs in a blanket or muffins and be done with it, especially with how Americans just naturally kept gravitating towards easier and easier food. It goes really well with watching some TV and lazing around, you know? The McDonald's steak, egg, and cheese bagel came out around the same time as its big breakfast and was often something families ordered together when they ate out. The incredible mix of egg and cheese with really flavorful steak bits into a bagel was something people in the States could not get enough of. It was especially popular with the older crowd, which is funny because the company initially thought it would be more popular with the younger crowd. Back then, you could get this bagel for $1.25, which was a reasonable steal and a perfect add-on at the time. Breakfast menus around the nation had a hard time competing with the steak, egg, and cheese bagel. And despite it being discontinued, it is an 80s icon we really want back. Lard biscuits are pretty much the heroes of old-school baking. If you actually look at it from a historical lens, these unapologetically flavorful biscuits have kept way more bellies full than something like turnips. No, but really, lard biscuits have been a generational safety net for when a hunger pang is about to turn a bad day into a bad week. Lard biscuits were the go-to in Southern kitchens for the longest time, even before butter became a staple ingredient in the area. Folks would keep tins of drippings on the stove, but most of the lard was preserved, not because people had to ration it or because they were running awfully short, but because they just liked it that much. Lard biscuits are something you don't see around anymore, but during several of the past few centuries, as well as notable periods like the Great Depression and the World Wars, lard biscuits were man's best friends. One part of American culture that really never should have died off or leaned towards simplicity was fancy little holiday season variations like Christmas tree waffles. What were these? They were just your typical everyday waffles, same maple syrup, same time in the oven, same everything, but they had so much love poured into them. The idea here was to make it look like a Christmas tree, and people pulled out all the stops, the whole 9 yards, to make theirs resemble one as closely as possible. It even became like a community competition. That type of thing was so common to see in America during the 20th century, and it really added some personalization to the holiday season, which is sorely missing today. It was a way to have genuine fun with what you were eating and involved even kids in the cooking process. They'd love playing around with the frostings, sprinkles, and fruits so that they could have the most faithful Christmas tree pancakes on the block. Adults would similarly pour some real brain power into getting theirs to pop off. It was just a much more fun way to enjoy a classic we have every day in honor of Christmas, but nowadays, takeout culture and pre-made desserts from bakeries have replaced trends like that. People would rather make a charcuterie board over any decorative dessert today. A mini skillet bowl sounds healthy enough, right? That was not the only fast food name that would take a step in a more greener direction, as McDonald's came out with their fruit and yogurt parfait sometime after their big breakfast, initially being a sweet cup you could get for just $1. It was also a wonderful breakfast if you were trying for a healthier lifestyle or were one of those early morning run people. Maybe you had the gym in the afternoon and were keener on lighter breakfasts, or maybe you just want to get your fruit game up. Either way, the parfait sold in waves and made sales go high for an item that was irregular from the rest of the menu. Unfortunately, it was something they discontinued during the pandemic to make service quicker for workers because everyone prioritized minimizing contact back then. Honestly, the fact that nobody is talking about how good molasses toast is these days is certifiably criminal behavior. I just want you to picture hot toast, and I mean real, genuine bread, not packaged, factory-made fluff, but actual freshly baked bread with deep, dark molasses. Not the generic stuff you find in marts and stores nowadays, but actual molasses. Blackstrap, bitter, smoky, sweet, and punchy. This is something brown sugar wishes it could be. Molasses toast is something that was definitely the moment back when it was popular, and those were times when you would consider sugar a luxury. Most folks tried to get it on everything they possibly could, whether that was biscuits, cornbread, hot milk, pies, or toast. The first person to put that stuff on toast hit a gold mine, and everybody copied the blueprint afterwards. The toast was absolutely the move, and butter melting with the molasses created this perfect harmony of sweetness. The bread was the perfect stage for that, and if you had it today, you'd feel like you're going back through time to a farmhouse kitchen in the 40s. You can eat this toast as it is or mix it up with some honey and nuts if you really feel like bringing out your inner chef. Some people also double down on the sugar rush by adding cinnamon and vanilla extract. Something that went bar for bar with the French toast sticks were the Cinni Minis from Burger King, which were a delight you could not miss out on. Ever found yourself having a sudden sweet tooth or craving you cannot control for some cinnamon goodness? Cine Minis were the cure for all your ailments, and they came cheaper than some ibuprofen or a Panadol. All the same, any headache you had after a bitter day would wash away with each delicious bite. Often, people would pair the French toast sticks with these too because they made such an elite dessert breakfast combo. Despite introducing it in the late 90s, its success was good enough for them to keep it in circulation until 2016, and the 2000s to 2010s were a volatile time for food in America. The market was constantly changing, and the Cine Minis eventually lost their spark. So we're going to start our list off with a classic that everyone's familiar with: stale bread pancakes, and you might be surprised how people made pancakes out of bread, but it's an interesting little process that'll show you just how resourceful we really could be. They're also surprisingly tasty, and the idea here is to soak slices or cube-sized chunks of stale bread in milk, and when even that's not available, water, then mash it up with eggs. You need a little bit of flour for this to work, and whatever extra flair you want to add to it is your own preference. Personally, I always go for some honey. These pancakes are something that isn't just exclusive to American tables either. They're a tradition that stretches from so many different cultures across the world that it's simply just a grandpa meal now. Plus, flavor-wise, these go with any kind of game plan. You can sprinkle some cheese, throw in different kinds of herbs like parsley and oregano for a more aromatic pancake, or go savory with salt and pepper. Everything works, and they're awfully cheap, so why not? Today, we're going to be diving into one of the most unexpected combinations from an old-school kitchen. Yup, fried apples and onions. Those sweet, tender apples and savory caramelized onions make for a much better meal than you would originally think. As they sizzle together in a skillet covered with buttery richness, the dish becomes the peak of comfort food when times are hard and you don't have much in the pantry. This dish is actually something that goes back all the way to the 19th century, specifically in the Appalachian and southern regions, where it was very common in kitchens to make the most of whatever was available. Apples were something that was plentiful, and onions were dirt cheap, so the combination made all the sense in the world when you looked at it from your wallet's point of view. Sometimes simple really does the trick, and with the Southern-style chicken biscuit that McDonald's put on their breakfast menu, they proved that old golden rule of thumb true to the core. Just a piece of slightly dry, oregano-flavored chicken between two halves of a biscuit, this was a very popular add-on and basically a guaranteed order if you were getting hash browns or a whole combo meal from the breakfast menu. It was hard to hate on it because at the time it filled a niche that no one in the market was really taking up, which was a slightly more tame chicken biscuit, not a very spicy one. Plus, that commercial was pretty catchy when it used to air the time, and if McDonald's does anything right, it is the marketing. The Southern-style chicken biscuit got discontinued a while later as it fell out of popularity due to inflation. People did not see the point in paying that much for it, and we could not blame them. If a counter near you still serves any of these, sit at the stool, not the booth. Order the plate the way the cook still remembers it, leave the change as your tip, and watch the waitress refill your cup before the rim gets near the bottom. Tell us in the comments which plate carried your father, your mother, or your own first morning out of the house, and which counter still keeps the warmer on at 4. Somewhere in a small town you have not driven through in a long time, the chrome shines a little less, and the warmer bell still rings.